As you enter the old city of Jerusalem through the Lion's Gate on the eastern wall, built by Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent in 1538, few yards ahead on the Via Dolorosa, on the right side, there is one of the best preserved Crusaders' churches of the Holy Land, the Church of St. Anna. Built on 1st century AD cave, this 12th century church shelters, according to an old tradition, the house of Joachim and Anna, the parents of the Ever Virgin Mary and grandparents of our Lord Jesus Christ. Next to St. Anna Church, on the same compound belonging today to the Order of the White Fathers, there is a literally archeological mass, a huge and deep excavation site showing various layers of occupation. This is the traditional place of an ancient pool nicknamed in the time of Jesus the Pool of Beth-Hesda, an Aramaic word meaning the house of grace, the house of kindness, or the house of mercy. In the 8th century BC, King Hezekiah of Judah built a dam here across a shallow valley to capture runoff rainwater. It became known as the Upper Pool, mentioned in 2 Kings 18:17 and Isaiah 7:3. Around 200 BC, the high priest Simon added a second pool on the south side of the dam, mentioned in Sirach, chapter 50, verse 3. In the time of Jesus, the site of the two pools was outside of the walled city. In the 1st century AD, the pools were visited by sick people, Jewish and pagans alike, who believed that the waters have miraculous therapeutic powers. After 135 AD, when Roman Emperor Hadrianus destroyed the ancient city of Jerusalem, turning into a pagan city called Aelia Capitolina, a temple dedicated to the Greek god of medicine Asclepius was built on the side of these pools. In the 5th century AD, the pious Byzantine empress Saint Evdosia, who built St. Stephen Basilica on the compound of today famous biblical school École Biblique et Archéologique Française on Nablus Road, constructed a church on the side of the pools of Bethesda and named it, quote, Mary where she was born, end quote. The basilica was destroyed by Persians in 614 AD. The Crusaders built a small chapel, the Church of the Paralytic, over part of the ruined Byzantine basilica. The facade, main entrance, and apse of the Crusader chapel can be seen over the pools. The pools were unearthed by the archaeologists at the end of the 19th century. At this pool, the Pool of Bethesda, took place the healing of the paralytic man narrated in John chapter 5, verses 1 through 15, and prescribed as gospel reading in the Byzantine Orthodox Church for the 4th Sunday of Easter. Let us take a closer look to our pericope, John chapter 5, verses 1 through 15. We learn just at the beginning that Jesus was in Jerusalem on the occasion of a festival. Biblical scholars believe that this festival could have been Pesach or Passover, commemorating the liberation of ancient Israel out of the Egyptian slavery around 1250 BC, or Sukkot, the festival of tents or booths in the fall, commemorating the 40 years that Israel spent in the wilderness moving towards the promised land. We learn also that in Jerusalem by the Sheep Gate, which was probably placed very close to the today's gate called the Gate of Lions, there was a pool, and that pool was named in Hebrew Beth-Hesda. Rather, this is the Aramaic word Beth-Hesda, meaning house of grace, or house of goodness, or house of mercy. And that pool had 5 porticos, meaning 5 walkways equipped with columns and roofs all around. In these porticos, we learned there were a great multitude of weak, blind, lame, and paralyzed people waiting the moving of the water. And in verse 4, we learn how this moving of the water happened. It says that an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then first after the troubling of the water stepped in was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. And we learn also that in this great multitude of people there was a certain man, in Greek tis anthropos, which was suffering of weakness for 38 years. It's very interesting, 38 years that this man was suffering of that weakness, parallels probably the 38 years that Israel spent journeying in the wilderness, as we learn from Deuteronomy 2. In both cases, the case of ancient Israel roaming in the wilderness, and this sick man lying there without any support, any help, in both cases, there was the divine providence, God watching them for 38 years. When Jesus saw him, so this man lying there knew that he had nobody, and that he was for a long time there, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" In Greek, hygis. In other words, do you want to be made whole? So we learn here that the man was interested in the minimal aspect of the miracle, just to be healed and just to be able to go around. But Jesus was actually interested in something more. He wanted to restore this human being to the initial wholeness. Very interesting. Then John 5:7, we see that this man is giving a kind of excuse. He says, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I'm making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." And Jesus, instead of continuing the conversation with the sick man, he suddenly commands the man, "Rise, take your pallet and walk." The word for rising here in Greek is egiro. It's very interesting that egiro means, probably primarily, wake up. And we have a variant of this verb egiro, ex egiro, in Daniel chapter 12:2, speaking about the final bodily resurrection, like people being raised up from the dust through the power of God. Not in vain, the church decided this pericope to be read during the Pentecostarium after the Easter, because it has something to do with the rising and the resurrection. The sick man was depicted here as almost dead, and Jesus was waking him up, giving him the command, "Rise up, stand up, be resurrected, be whole again." And then he continues. Jesus said, "Take your pallet." So why Jesus is asking this man to take his pallet and to carry his pallet on a Sabbath day? And we learned that this was on a Sabbath day. And that pallet, that kind of straw mattress, was worn out. Imagine this man was lying there for 38 years. It was stinky probably. And Jesus is like telling him, "No, take your pallet and walk." The verb here used is peripateo, which means walk around, back and forth. You see, Jesus doesn't command this man to go home because he didn't have a home, apparently, because he said that he doesn't have friends, he doesn't have relatives. But he tells him, now take a walk, go around. And we learn that actually the man took a walk, but he was going straight forward to the temple area to give thanks to God for that miracle. And then he got in trouble. Why? Because the Pharisees, the religious authorities were everywhere, and especially when Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, because they were interested to see what this fellow from Galilee, from Nazareth, this son of the carpenter, has to say or has to do. And they came to the man and said, man, do you know what you are doing now? It's unlawful, actually, to carry an object on the Sabbath day. And the man, out of fear or excuses, he said, if you want to blame me, do not blame me, blame the one who healed me, because that man actually asked me to carry this pallet. So the Pharisees go now to Jesus and ask the same question, why you told this man to carry the pallet? And Jesus actually gives this short but poignant answer, my Father is still working, and I also am working, end quote. In other words, Jesus is like saying, you have a problem with me that I'm doing these healings, that I'm doing these works on the Sabbath day, that I transgress the Sabbath day for the goodness of the people who are in need. Now go to my Father. He is doing the same. The one who instituted the Sabbath day, God the Creator, like we learn in Genesis chapter 2, is the first one to transgress the Sabbath day. Why? Because he is taking care of you, so you may have a day of rest, doing nothing. He is working on your behalf. So in other words, Jesus is like telling the Pharisees, guys, you are so much stuck to the observation of the Sabbath day that you forget something, that humanity is the crown of creation. The humans actually are created in the image of God. And if God gave you this Sabbath day law to rest yourself, it's for your benefit and not vice versa. So this is the story that I wanted actually to share with you. If I have to give a title to this little sermonette, I'll give it Blame the Pallet, because everything is around that pallet. Jesus asked the man, carry the pallet, just to have this conversation with the Pharisees about God being the creator, the provider, the one who is working even on the Sabbath day for the goodness of people. And we should learn from God that the most important commandment is love your God and love your neighbor as yourself. Thank you very much.